Okay. Dear Father in heaven, we come before thee at this time in thanksgiving for the opportunity we have through the electronic devices to have our regular council meeting this 30th of this 29th day of April 2020. We're grateful, Father, for the safety and protection on our community, but we also know that many are suffering and we pray a blessing upon them. Help us to be vigilant in all we do and to have good discussion regarding the upcoming budget. And we pray for these things humbly in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
All right. So I will call this meeting to order. And we have an agenda. And if you find it to your satisfaction, I need a motion to approve it.
Make that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Selk. Welcome back, Councillor Barnes. We had our prayer, so we just started.
I heard it.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. I can see your hand. That's great. So we have a delegation. We have Corporal Don Fraser on the phone, and you will be able to hear him. As you can see, you have a quarterly that does not have comparable, but if you need to ask questions, please do so after the presentation. Thank you. Corporal Don Fraser, are you there?
I am, Your Honor, right here.
Oh, perfect, Corporal. So if you want to go through your report, and then the councillors will have the occasion to ask you questions if they need to.
Yeah, very good. So yeah, you got our quarter report there. I'll just run through the stats real quick. I do have last year's at this time, so first quarter, January to March from 2019 as well, just for comparison. So I'll just run through that as well. So persons offenses in town were 58 for the quarter. Property offenses were 69. Other criminal code, which include just stuff like resisting arrest, criminal harassment, that kind of stuff. There was 91 of them. Drugs, there was 8. Federal statutes, which include like Smuggling Act, Firearms Act, that kind of stuff. There was 1. Provincial statutes that don't include traffic were 317. Provincial traffic was 95. Criminal code traffic, which likely would be impaired. I don't have the exact stat here, but I imagine it would be an impaired. There's 7 of those. 13 collisions. Bylaws were 6, and 1 Cannabis Act offense. So most of the stuff is, so for persons offenses, like I say, we're 58 for the year. We were 30 last year, so we're up a little bit there. Property offenses were up by about 4 from last year at this time. Other criminal code were down. We were at 126 last year. We're down to 91. Drug offenses were down by 1. Federal statutes were down by 1. Provincial statutes that don't include traffic, we were down by 20. We were at 337 last year. Provincial traffic, we're down a little bit. Criminal code traffic, we are down by 8. Collisions, we had 6 last year at this time. We have 13 this year. And our bylaws, we were at 6 last year. And we're 6 for both years, actually, we're the same. Sorry, our collisions are, 27 last year, 13 this year. Cannabis Act, we had none last year, and we got 1 this year. And we've got 80 persons lodged in cells this year so far. Last year, I believe we had 105. And that's all I got.
All right. So, councillors, do you want to ask questions of... Go ahead, Councillor Bengry.
Don, first of all, on behalf of the mayor and council, being a former police officer many, many years ago, our condolences go out to you and the members of the RCMP when the loss of that officer in the line of her duty.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate it.
Very unfortunate, and I know it affects everybody.
Yes, it does. It's got a big impact on us.
When we talk about criminal code traffic, and you're talking probably impaired driving?
Yes, that's my best guess. I have a list here that's got some stuff on it, but it doesn't. Yeah, That's dangerous driving, impaired driving, refusal, which falls under our impaired driving laws if you refuse to blow when you're requested to do so or directed to, or drive while prohibited. So most of our drive while prohibited tickets that we give are usually provincial tickets, but occasionally we'll get one where a person would have been, let's say they've had an impaired, they've been convicted of the impaired, they've lost their license through the federal courts or through the federal act of the criminal code. Then if we find them driving, they get charged with another criminal code offense. If somebody has just lost their license due to demerits or they're suspended, then they're under a provincial act, which would be the provincial traffic. So the criminal code traffic includes impaired refusals and like stuff like I just discussed in a suspended driver under the criminal code.
Thanks, Don. Now,
Yep.
is this detachment capable of doing the drug impaired driving test?
To some degree we can, yeah. We've got one member, I think, right now that's trained as what we call an SFST member. So they're capable of doing a field sobriety test, like something you'd see on TV. So they put your fingers in front of your eyes and have you try to look back and forth and walk in a straight line. We have one member trained on that right now. We had a second member slated for that, but the COVID stuff canceled all of our training right now until at least July. So we have to relook at that or revisit it when they open that up again. We're looking at an option of sending a member down for what's called drug recognition training, but that's in Florida and it kind of comes through division to do that. So we'll have to see. So we do have one that's capable of doing the basics right now to get us through. So
Thank you, Don.
you're welcome.
Corporal Fraser, I'd like to ask you a question regarding person offenses. You told us that last year about this time was about 30. This
Yes.
year we have about 58, which is almost double. Help me understand a little bit what's going on here.
I don't know. I don't really have an answer for you. It's just the nature of people, I guess. I don't know. Like some of this would have probably come into play right around the start of the COVID crisis. Maybe some domestics where people are in their homes. Maybe some more close quarters than they expect to be. Maybe tensions have risen. That doesn't account for all of it, of course, but our person's offenses includes like robberies, assaults, sex assaults, uttering threats, that kind of anything that would be directed at a person. So I don't really have an explanation. Like I say, just the nature of maybe it's, we've had a milder winter. People were out more, like, our transient population is where we get some of them, like our robberies and stuff. And that may have accounted for it, but I really don't have a direct explanation for something like that. Like just the stats themselves. Charges, I can see where we can direct those a little bit, but these are just straight up offenses that have happened. So I don't really have an explanation.
Okay, so we have started to give a little bit of a release regarding watching your property, securing your property. Is there something that you at the RCMP would do even through the town, or do you want the town to carry on doing it on your behalf with what you're telling us?
Like are you talking messaging or physically?
Yeah, messaging.
Looking at like we have like programs in place here that we do, like we've utilized the COP and ourselves, like registering if you go out of town. We tried to do a meeting last quarter with the town, with the people of the town regarding like protecting yourself in public and protecting your property, that kind of stuff. But I think we got some dates mixed. So I've got sometime in the future here plans to have a meeting, kind of like what Sergeant Hodge had done before Christmas there. Something similar to that. So, but as for general messaging and stuff, yeah, if you guys could continue with that, that would be awesome.
Okay. And are you okay with us kind of quoting you in a sense that we are saying that you are trying to help the community not be victim of crimes of opportunity? Is that okay if we quote you kind of?
Yes, absolutely. That's
okay. All right, thank you very much. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. And thank you to your department for all you do. It's not an easy time, and I know that you are working with our peace officer and with the Blood Tribe Police right now, trying to help within the hard times that we have with the COVID. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. All right. We now have the minutes of the 14th of April, 2020. It was a regular council meeting. We have minutes that need to be approved. I read them. I feel them. I feel that they are appropriate. We lost Councillor Brown. We don't hear. Okay. Councillor Bengry?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of March.
No,
whatever.
April 24th.
Yeah, April 24th. Thank
April
you.
14th, sorry.
April 14th,
Yeah, April 14th.
regular
sir.
council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. That's what happened when you don't have your glasses. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, so let's go to bylaw and policy. The bylaw 1688 is a tax penalty bylaw. We passed the first reading, and today I would say we should consider second and third reading. So there was no changes made to that bylaw, and so we can proceed.
I'd make a motion
Councillor
to,
Court?
make a motion for second read of bylaw 1688, the tax penalty bylaw.
Thank you. Any question at this time? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. All right, so we need Councillor Brown. Do you want to do the third reading?
That I make third reading of bylaw 1688, tax penalty bylaw.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. It's adopted. Thank you very much. I hope that it will help a few of our citizens. 6B, this is going to be a lengthy discussion, possibly. So the 2020 budget updates. And I'm going to turn it to Jeff. And I hope that you have your sheets on the front of you to be able to discuss, ask questions, etc.
Hey, thanks, Mayor.
Way into our houses to do it.
That's right. So I just wanted to make it more complicated for all of you by taking you one on Friday and then changing it today and then having one on your electronic copy as well. So, but I think we're going to be fine. Bear with me. So we're a little bit ahead of the game. Normally you wouldn't see this until next meeting. So we don't have to do anything with this tonight except kick a few things around. As you can imagine, there's a few pieces of this we're struggling with regarding revenues and expenses for summer recreation. So that's a bit of a challenge. And I don't necessarily, you can see in the middle column, whichever one you're using, it doesn't matter, that there are some adjustments. And I don't know that we necessarily need to go through all of them, but I did pick out a few that I wanted to hit that were significant, that I need some feedback from you on, frankly. And then, but if anything, of course, as always, anything in between there, stop me and let's talk about it. So when we start on the first page, it's our revenues page. It's where we generate our revenues. The first portion is taxation. One thing we did, if you were really examining your last budget in December, is we had line item the policing cost. We've just put that in the general revenue requirement now because we weren't ready to break it out on the tax notices. So it's just rolled into there. And then we had some tweaks to grants. So if you look in 1-07-841, provincial conditional other, you'll see a few little changes that are added to this revenue. So we've added some MSI operating. We reduced the ACP for the intern. And the reason is we had it all in 2020, but he's here for a few months in 2021 as well. So we reserved some of it for next year. The ICF, we brought forward everything remaining unspent out of our ICF ACP grant because we're going to need to spend that this year. And then we brought forward some MSI capital for operating projects. Now, one of the good news stories here, and this isn't a budget chock full of them, but there is a couple. We had more MSI capital allocation come through than we had put in the December budget. Not a ton, but there was a little bit extra there, so that was a good thing. And so we were able to bring a few more things forward on some street repairs. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Is that $55,000?
Correct, yeah.
The 55, yeah.
Yeah, correct. The rest are just little adjustments to grants that have come through as the actual costs have come through. So nothing too major there. One other thing that I wanted just to point out is, 1 second here. 1-32-400. These are this is movement within the budget, but doesn't impact the bottom line. Once we had our year end done and we had our capital all finalized, we were able to look at the wage and machinery recovery on all of our capital. And I'll mute Councillor Court there for a second. And we've put it all under public works custom work instead of having it under water and wastewater. Again, it didn't impact the bottom line. It's just some ways that we're going to look at doing it forward. Now, let's jump down to 172,402. Now, summer recreation, campground, pool, golf course. Those three are the big ones. Councillor Selk, I'll use what you said to me this morning. It's like trying to nail Jello to the wall.
I like it.
We're having a little trouble nailing down how to manage what we currently know about changes in revenue and expenses versus what we're guessing at. So, for example, we know that as we sit right now, the pool's closed. And there's a pretty good chance it's going to stay closed, but we don't know that for sure. We know right now the golf course is closed, but indications are that may be open in a month. For example, that golf may be good to go in a month, but we don't know that for sure. And then we're hearing from different stakeholder groups like soccer is canceled, baseball. So we're starting to get formal cancellations of groups. So we've gone around and to be frank, we're struggling with how to manage this because we don't want to overstate revenues. That's dangerous because that's revenue you won't claim, and then if you don't get it, you got a shortfall. We don't want to understate expenses because if these can open up in some way, we need to have taxed for some expenses to open them. So that's a risk. We can't just drop them proportionately because they don't make or lose money the same ratio.
Yeah.
So for example, we lose about $1,000 a day at the pool, for example, that it's open. But at the golf course, we only lost $7,800 last year. Our revenue and expenses are fairly proportionate. However, it's easy to close the pool. It's not easy to close the golf course.
Yeah.
I've got to have staff that are putting on herbicide and fungicide, and you can't just let the greens die and go to seed. And so, we've got staff that will have to work out there full time, whether we open it or not.
Right.
And trust me, it's contracted staff. We have 4 people out there and that's it. And if we don't open, that's all we'll have. But the pool has challenges, for example, that if, let's say we can open July 1st to the pool, let's say, can we get lifeguards? They've probably gone and found other work, rightfully so. So we have a challenge of getting staff. And then we have to ask ourselves, if it's any later than July 1st, what's the point of opening up? We close in August anyway. So, or in 1st of September. So what we've done, and if you don't like this method, I understand because I'm not fully settled on it. On many of our revenues, we reduced the revenue, but we left most of the expenses. Okay, so for the pool, let's use campground as an example. 172,402. We cut the revenue projection in half, from 140 to 70,000. And by the way, we're going to talk about campground a little later on because we have some tough decisions to make on the campground right away. But we'll talk about that later. On the pool, we cut the revenue in half. And if you look at our recreation programming, we canceled most of it. When you look at softball and soccer and football and Little League. We've canceled most of those revenues. If you go over the page, you get into civic center rental. So for example, we're not going to have community theater in here this year. Gymnastics is unlikely given the nature of that activity. Well, that's a $9,000 touch. You know, so these add up in a big way. Golf course, we reduced revenue by $120,000 because again, we feel that's going to open in May, but people aren't going to be traveling as much. We have to spread people out. We can't put as many people on the course. We have to prorate membership fees. All that stuff's going to happen to reduce revenues. So this has been a bit of a challenge for us because we've tried to maintain the cost side so that we can we have money to open them if we need to. Now, the good news, if I can give you the positive side of this, we reduce all these revenues, but we still have a balanced budget, by the way. So that's a good thing.
Jeff, can I just ask you a question then?
Yeah, of course.
Imagine the worst scenario.
Yeah.
Those facilities do not open and do not generate any revenue.
Yep.
The expenses, there is a basic amount of expenses that need to be incurred because of the nature of the facilities, especially the golf course.
Yep.
Would then that keep us in a balanced position, or will we incur a deficit that we will have to figure out how to cover?
Right. So let's use two facilities just because they're easy to compare. Let's use the pool and the golf course. So if we don't open the pool at all, we still have some costs. We still have to keep the place up and, you know, have utility costs and those things, but we'd probably save $75,000-$80,000 by not opening the pool. If we can't open the golf course, we would have no more than the staff we have now. We'd have the whole season with 3 or 4 staff. We'd probably lose $75,000 or $80,000.
Okay. All right. So we wouldn't be in a very dire situation.
We're going to do some further analysis on that. We're going to break out all of these expenses and say, okay, what is the worst case scenario what would be the worst cost case scenario where we incur the most costs, and the worst revenue generation scenario.
Yeah. That's what I like to hear.
Yeah. So we're working through that. It looks on the surface that if both of those stay closed, it's a bit of a break even, but I'll tell you, worst case for me is that, and I don't think this will happen, by the way, but pools are allowed to open on June 15th, let's say. I don't see it happening, but let's say. And your bather load has to be a fraction of what it can normally be.
Yeah.
And so your revenues would be a fraction. So we'd still lose, for example, maybe $60,000 or $70,000 on the pool instead of $100, let's say.
Right.
On the other side of that is that we have the golf course open, say June, and we staff up, and we simply can't generate much revenue. No one wants to travel, no one wants to golf, and we lose there too. Yeah, that's the risk, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to have to be really careful. What I've talked to staff about, Bart and Jill and Hawken and I have met, that however we pass this budget with recreation, we will have to work with each of those facilities and say, let's use the pool, for example, and say, okay, Doug, you have a plan A, B, and C budget. Plan A budget is that you never open, so you can't spend anything. That's a really easy one. Spend the least amount possible because you're not going to open. Plan B is we can open July 1st, and we're only going to do reduced hours so that our expenses stay at 50% of normal, for example. So we're going to work through each facility and say, what's all these scenarios and what does your budget look like? It stands to reason, and it goes without saying, I hope, that at the golf course, for example, if it stays closed, we have to minimize expenses as much as possible. We only lost $7,800 or so last year at the golf course. Awesome, operationally. We have a capital payment of 67, but so 75 total. But I don't want to sit here 8 months from now and we lost 150 operationally plus our capital payment. We lost $250,000 at the place, right? That's a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah, I think we need those analyses when we come back, maybe 2 weeks from now, months from now, whatever that is.
Yeah.
To try to really understand, because it's difficult to make decisions without really understanding those scenarios.
Yeah. Councillor Court has something there.
Yes. Hasn't the province already answered the question on the pool where they're telling us that there's no meetings, no people more than 15 in
Yeah.
public? And they said that's right through the end of August, unless the province changes their mind.
You're absolutely right. And this is what I was discussing with Jeff, thinking, is that scenario a viable scenario?
So I'll qualify it just a bit, though. They've said that the events, the mass gathering restrictions will be through the summer, but they're looking for ways to open things like golf courses and campgrounds and things like that under certain conditions.
Okay.
With strict control. Now, I think the pool would be the last of those that I just mentioned to be able to open. I don't know how you run 100 kids a day through your dressing room that touch everything along the way, and then put them in a pool that if your chlorine residual doesn't just right, you're going to have a wreck. Just don't see pools happening. I really don't. But we were thinking, now one thing it needs to be clear too is we don't have to pull, if we know it's not going to open, we don't have to pull all the revenue and expense out of the budget, because as long as those are proportionate in some way, it doesn't affect your taxation because the revenue is offsetting expense.
Yeah.
So don't panic if you're saying, well, why is there any expense in it all? We have to tax for it.
Right.
Well, not if we generate revenue to offset it.
But that is a big story, to stay proportionate.
Yeah.
Because proportionate loss is acceptable, but total loss is not.
I know. So what you'll, sorry.
The swimming pool, at what point in time do you decide that, like, how long does it take to fill that pool? I mean, you're obviously not going to fill that pool till you've made a decision one way or the other that you're going to open or not. If you're not going to open, you don't have to put the water in the pool, right?
Well, normally.
Yeah,
but this year isn't normal. So a couple of things. We're draining it right now because we fill it with water for the winter.
Yeah.
And then we'll clean it and get all that done. And then we actually are going to put quite a bit of water in it because we've got a leak somewhere and we want to do some pressure testing all through it. So even a little extra time in the spring is helpful to us from a maintenance point of view, because we're going to do some pressure testing on all the supply and return lines in the pool. And so it'll have some quantity of water in it. But so you don't burn through chemical when no one's in it.
Right.
And you don't have to keep it at temperature. You know, it can just sit there and be cold. So there's a cost of water. Councillor Brown's grinning because she's saying it's cold anyway.
I would never say that.
Yeah, right.
Go ahead, Councillor.
What I will say is I have canceled swim club because I'm supposed to start the end of May and I can't. So
no.
So Jeff, regarding that leak, is Acapulco coming to town, or are they not under the COVID-19 issue and restrictions?
Yeah, Acapulco's coming to town as soon as they don't have to isolate for 14 days when they return to Ontario. So right now, if they fly to Alberta, they said that when they go back, they have to isolate for 14 days.
Too much business loss.
They're looking for that to be lifted, and then they'll fly out.
Okay, so that's fair enough. Okay, so any other questions, councillors, regarding recreation? As you can see, we like Councillor Selk's story, the jellos that doesn't stick on the wall.
It's a very moving target, and you'll see it. It's going to come up a few times in the budget, but we're trying to figure out how to manage it. One other thing, the very last revenue account is just showing you everything when we did the reserves listing 2 weeks ago, or at the audit. So that's everything coming forward from there.
Thanks.
Otherwise,
can I ask you something regarding the airport and regarding that story? We needed to know from the ICF perspective if we are not settling by the end of the month, which is tomorrow. what is going to happen? Do we have an update on that story or don't we?
We do. Very quickly, let me just find it because I got it flagged for follow-up here today.
The story was that if we are going to settle later on, we still wanted the money to be retroactive.
Yep. So the county sent me back a position today after their council meeting. And then Andrew and Bill emailed me today and would like to set up a meeting with the negotiating committees in the next few days.
Okay,
So
well,
I just got it before the meeting, and so I'll get a hold of you guys on that a
so
little
that's
later.
fair enough. Councillor Bengry?
Several questions, Jeff. How about the unique programming at the swimming pool, like Mothers and Tots swims? Could that not go forward?
No.
Adult swim
No,
and competitive swimming?
no.
No.
Nothing.
So I guess could it possibly, if you never had more than 15 people, including lifeguards at the pool?
Yeah.
Maybe, but I don't think Alberta Health is ready to let us all bathe in the same bathtub together while this is going around.
Yeah.
Okay, now, Jan and I went for a drive on Sunday afternoon, went out to Levitt. And there's some 8-inch line going in out there. Do you know what that's for?
Can we stay with the budget first?
Well,
I have no idea.
That's the county water line going to Mountain View.
Okay, but that's a capital expenditure. Can we stay with the operation at this point?
Yeah, I don't know what that is, Councillor.
Okay.
Can we assume that it's just irrigation line going from the irrigation
That's
district?
what I think it is.
Yeah. I'm actually quite comfortable we'd be informed. The county isn't proceeding on that project right now. I'm almost positive of that.
No.
Anything else, Councillor Bengry?
You never know what the county does. They met as a council
Well,
yesterday afternoon, even having delegations in their council room.
okay. Well, remember you online, okay?
Yeah.
Thank you. All right.
Anything else, Councillor Bengry?
No, that doesn't.
Okay. So then we get into the uses of operating funds. To be honest, that first page is just little adjustments as we've tweaked wage budget and things have changed a little bit. There's not much to really discuss there, to be honest. On page 3, 2-12506, we took out the parade expenses. We assume we probably won't be having an event that brings another 3,000 people all together downtown. So we felt fairly comfortable with that one.
Which brings me to the point with the release of Dr. Henshaw regarding a mass gathering not happening in summer. It might be time for us to have a release and to advise all those involved, the Rotary and the Ag and whoever else is involved, the Remington, that it will not happen by order of the province.
Yeah, we can come to that in that emergency piece of the agenda, Mayor. I wanted to talk about that a bit too.
Thank you.
If you go to the very bottom of page 3, it's 232501. There's a number of additions here, which are just some asphalt improvements around the community. As we came out of the spring, we've got some areas that broke up pretty bad. And so we've added a few locations there. Now, those are being funded through MSI Capital, being routed through MSI, our operating budget. And it's all good. It almost sounds a little unseeming, but no, it's perfectly fine. That's an approved expense under MSI Capital. So that's how we're funding it. You'll see.
I'm missing that.
It is on the bottom of page 3, Councillor.
27201. Oh, no, I'm telling you a story. I already flipped the page. Sorry.
It's 232501.
232501.
It's on page 4, eh?
3.
3 and 4, it kind of rolls over.
Well, it depends what you're using.
Different sheet then.
You know what? Maybe it came on since the one I delivered Friday, Councillor. It's possible.
Just look at the number 232501.
Yeah, it's on page 6.
Okay, so it's on page 6.
Oh, all right. Oh, yeah. I have a portrait. You guys have a landscape. Sorry. So yes. All right. 232501.
Okay.
On the next page, there was not, I don't have any notes here to discuss anything. Yeah, I think we're fine. It was just carry forwards from the last one. So the next one I wanted to talk about, but again, anything in between 262330. And this is a large piece. It's a bit aggressive. We're meeting again with Jerem Scott in a couple of weeks, but this was essentially closing the information center for the season. If the national parks are closed on both sides of the border, and if the border is closed for any longer, I don't see a lot of purpose in having an information center that no one's stopping in at. We can't even have public washrooms in it at this point in time that are open. So we've spoken with Jerem, and we've agreed that we're going to meet again May 15th to discuss a late opening. But currently, we took that money out at this point.
Except for his basic expenses that incurred.
Yeah, we left a little in because, again, our contractors, we're going to talk about this with the campground too, they incur costs leading up to this. And so I told Jerem that if he had some costs of his insurance and a few other things, that we'd maybe negotiate to compensate him for that for the year if we were going to close it on him for the rest of the year.
And
so
it's fair.
That's why we've left that in there.
Right.
So there's that. A couple things. We took the Mormon Trail Chautauqua money out for the year. I don't think we need to spend that.
What about, sorry?
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
What about the money for the Agrodome that we would normally give them? Because that's like $11,000 or something. So that.
Yeah, it's 14.5. What you'll see, we'll get to that actually on the next page. We've left it in, recognizing that the event's probably not happening, but we need to have some discussion about that. Partly because I don't know if you could accommodate those types of events by August. I just don't know. You know, you have a bit of a lesser crowd. I think that the performers themselves would be fine. I just don't know. So there's still a few unknowns we got to decide here.
So can I just pipe in? They are doing some outside riding.
Yeah.
And they're starting to do some inside riding, but there's social distancing going on, so you can't have more. So they are doing some stuff, not just big, huge stuff with lots of people.
Yeah.
So if they have people, they have to be separated by 2 meters on each side.
Yeah, I've talked with the Courtney Hansen a bit about it. They're putting what seems to be reasonable measures in place to be compliant there.
They've chatted with Alberta Health Services and stuff too, so they're doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Good.
Good. So if you go down to 272602, there's not changes here, but I just wanted to have some discussion. Now remember, you don't have to pass anything in this tonight, so we can still mold this how we wish to mold it.
Okay, so
we've got our July 1st fireworks, Rotary Parade, Heritage Days, all those things.
Except you have the July 1st party in a park. That's a mass gathering, cannot happen.
Yeah, no, it's not going to happen. That one's going to be out.
That has to be out.
Yeah.
Right. For the fireworks, is that a possibility to even have fireworks in people being in their cars and watching from the hills, which they do normally?
Yeah.
Is that something that could be possible to lighten up the spirits?
I agree.
We've wondered about having like one $10,000 show instead of 2.5 and we make sure that we can accommodate as many cars as we can. I don't know. That's why we were hesitant to take some of this out.
Councillor Drew?
I think that if you give people the opportunity to gather, you're not going to be able to control social distancing. I think it would be really hard, right? I mean, I know it's great to see that kind of stuff, but I would think that people would
get out of their car.
You bet, and say, "Hey, this is going to be great. It's in the dark. Nobody's going to see me anyways." Blah blah blah. That kind of stuff, and all of a sudden you have a situation that we've created as the town. But that's
you have an excellent point, Councillor Court.
Well, we have a problem with slumping on that hill now too. So where would you hold it at? I mean, nobody's going to get out of their car anyhow. But down the road, they're slumping on that hillside now. Can you put people up there? Or just
Yeah, I think we could still make that work. There may be a bit of a setback, though.
I think Councillor Drew is worried about the perception that would mean that the town is okay to break the rule when it fills.
Well, the other piece, sorry. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Councillor.
Councillor Drew, finish your question and then I'll let Councillor Barnes.
No, I've just viewed people in the community going to, like, I'm going to the to Extra Foods or IGA, and there are still people that aren't practicing social distancing, and so
yeah, they're already relaxing. That's my fear. That
right,
when the rules.
Yeah, when the nice weather comes, people are going to gather together. They're going to want to get out and do stuff, and
yeah.
I mean, I think we would be viewed as saying, oh well, the town can do it, so
condoning it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Councillor Barnes, Councillor Selk.
Well, unless everybody has a convertible car, there's no point in doing it in cars. You can't see anything out of your car because everybody's sticking their heads out the window. So
okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Councillor Selk.
It ain't gonna happen, I don't think.
Councillor Selk, go ahead.
Perhaps we could look at it in a little more positive light, that the rules may change between now and then.
Wouldn't that be nice?
I guess the question I have is, how soon do you need to order the fireworks? Is this like something that has to be done months in advance? Because you could look at it like, we'll plan on it, and if we don't have to order it right away, then
yeah,
we'll have it. And if we can't do it, then we just won't.
Yeah. I think it's about 2 weeks, Councillor.
Okay. So, Councillor Court, what's your opinion?
I like what Councillor Selk said. I don't see it happening, but as long as we can delay it to the last second, and if we can go ahead with it, I would be happy to see it go ahead, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Okay. Councillor Bengry?
Yeah.
What's your opinion?
I think it's not going to happen.
Okay.
It's not going to happen.
All right. Councillor Barnes?
Unless we get something all cleared by June, it ain't gonna happen.
All right. So what we will do, we'll leave the money in the budget just in case. And if it's not happening, it's not happening. Are you okay with that?
What I would suggest is, if we want to leave it in, and if it doesn't happen, then we won't tax for fireworks next year. We'll just roll that money forward.
Would that work with you all?
Yep.
Okay. We lost Councillor Brown somewhere, unfortunately.
Okay. Well,
texted her, but is she there?
Not here at all.
Hold on, give me 1 second. Hold on. Where are you, Councillor Selk? There. I muted you, Councillor Selk. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay, Councillor Brown, I'm happy we can hear your voice again.
Councillor Brown, I'm going to text you a phone number, then you can phone direct in.
Okay, well, my computer is just restarted, so just give me a couple minutes.
Okay.
And we'll bring it back up.
Okay, well, sounds good. I can text you that, and you can do like Corporal Fraser and just phone in if you need to.
Okay, sounds good.
So, Councillor Brown, I don't know if you heard what the decision was made by council, kind of recommendation, is to leave the money for the fireworks in and wait and see what direction is from the government.
I agree.
Okay?
Yeah, I agree.
Right, so we just leave it there, just in case. It was a nice idea to try to see if we could pull something, but Councillor Drew is very wise and said it would be almost impossible to make sure that people follow the rules. So, fair enough.
Okay. As far as other operational expenses, there really wasn't anything else too major to discuss. One thing you may have seen throughout this, and their big numbers, is we had a bunch of changes to amortization. Mm-hmm. So, but remember, it's a non-cash expense, and it comes back out before we establish any mill rate. So, but yes, you would have seen $145,000 increase on Parks and Rec amortization. Hawkins just trying to He reviewed how we were calculating that and how we were going through it, and so made some adjustments, but they come back out.
Jeff, can I ask you something then?
Mm-hmm.
Under 272,800 town beautification, help me understand community in bloom. What does that represent exactly? Is that the prizes we give for people who have the best yard and all that stuff?
So it's a mix of a lot of things. When the committee was a little more active, it funded plants and flowers and initiatives, garbage bags, and yes, some prizing for winter lights and for yard of the week, that kind of thing. Yep.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Okay, let's talk capital for a minute here. So you'll see some capital changed a whole bunch, and it looks a little scary, but it's only in a couple of things. It's the solar farm is in there, so we got almost $4 million there. And the, I'm missing one other one.
The solar farm.
Oh, and the spray park contributions. So that was another 400 grand. And then lastly, we just added, none of you have this on your sheet. You'll have it next one. We just added the outfall line repair as well.
What I was looking for.
So capital had a considerable change, but that's because we've added all those projects in. So we don't incur the debt on the solar farm until it's active. And so we haven't had to expend anything on that yet, but that's coming soon. So that's why you see that manipulating the capital side of the budget quite a bit.
Okay, so Jeff, regarding the outfall line and the financing of it,
yeah,
we're going to pass a bylaw. I understand that, but also seem to see that we didn't get the arrangement, the financial arrangement we quite wanted. So we're going to have payments that are going to be double. Kind of.
Sort of. We're going to have a little bit of interest charge on a line of credit at the same time as we have a mortgage payment with Alberta Capital Finance. I'll talk about that more thoroughly when we look at that bylaw.
Okay.
But we think it's quite minimal. We think we'll manage it fine.
Okay, thanks.
And then otherwise, on use of capital funds, we've rolled everything forward from the reserves discussion a couple weeks ago. We've tweaked a couple little things, but other than that, while there's a lot of numbers there, there's nothing particularly new.
Right.
So unless there's any questions on that, that's the once over on the budget.
Can I just ask a question? So on my budget, it says that we have a deficit, a little bit of a deficit.
Yeah, that's tidied up now.
But that's all tidied. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
it's all good. Okay.
Yes, 4,700, the way it looks. I noticed that too. Okay, so that is a very good walk through the budget. Thank you so much for all you and your team have done, because honestly, it is very early in spring and we already have this review available to us. So that's wonderful.
So yeah, Mayor, to that, we have CCW that we can talk about this one more time. And then a resolution on, I believe it's the 12th of May. I think that's the date would be required. Yeah, the 12th.
Okay. All right, so that's really good. So that brings us to the next item. Now that we have a budget that looks like it's pretty well balanced or balanced. So even within the COVID-19 difficulty of estimating what we could get for revenue or expenses for recreations. Under 6C, we have a draft bylaw, 1690. It's a mill rate bylaw. And Jeff has worked with Jill to kind of create and Hawken to create a table more or less to show what the mill rate might be. And actually, I was pleasantly surprised with all that we had to do for adjustment, how little the impact is on our taxpayer, and I'm very pleased with that. Jeff, do you want to walk us through the last
Yeah, one
item
second here.
there?
Councillor Brown should be with us again here in just a minute. In fact, sorry to jump your sorry to jump your screen around, but I'll
Councillor
wait till.
Brown, are you okay? Are you on?
Okay,
You're
good.
good. Okay, perfect.
All right, I'll go
Thank
back
you.
to sharing the screen here then. Okay, I want to, before we talk about the bylaw, I want to show you this table. We use this table every year to look at the impact of the budget on the mill rate and on the average home. So at the very bottom, we have a 2020 column. Now the big things in this budget we talked about was we had a 2% inflationary piece in when we first created it. We then took $100,000 out of reserves to mitigate the inflationary piece, which it did because that was only about 54,000. So we backed inflation off, and then we added policing in. Okay. So with those three things, it was still about a just under $40,000 net increase in the need. But, well, I don't know why I just echoed there. When you look down on 2020 and go to, well, frankly, you can go, can you guys see my mouse move on this, or can you just see my screen? Okay, I didn't know how that worked. What that looks like is with the current dollars in the current budget, it translates to a 1% change in the mill rate for residential and 0.59 or 0.6% change in the mill rate. Now, if you scroll down to this column, 3 boxes down, what does that mean in real money to the average home? What it means is $15 for the average residential home and $45 for the average assessed business. So in the budget we just looked at, that's the tax implication of it.
I am quite pleased with that. Really, I am. I don't know if any of you want to comment, but
I want my $15.
Well,
with the province suggesting or allowing communities, towns to actually go into debt temporarily because of this COVID thing, I think we're doing very, very well here.
I don't want to go into that.
No, I don't
either. And that's why I say I think we're holding the line very, very well. And my hat's off to Jeff and the budget guys. They've done a fantastic job keeping us solvent.
And we do not see much of an increase.
No.
But what we see is how much we have tried to help the community with in absorbing the cost of the policing and by offering the businesses some relief. And
now,
so,
one thing I'll throw out just for your consideration, I'm not proposing this, but in the budget that we just talked about, there was still $155,000 in major utility capital reserves. You have the ability to mitigate more tax impact if you wish. Now, this is about as minimal as you can do it, 1% and 0.6%. But you do have some cash to mitigate that should you wish. And I'm not saying you should. I just want to point that out.
Jeff, my concern there, if we use that money, which I would love to use, is because we have such uncertainty regarding the recreation facilities. And I would rather have that as a buffer.
Okay.
At this point, I don't know how you feel, Council.
We kind of covered this last meeting where we thought we should keep some more reserves than we were just in case. So I agree with the mayor on this one.
Me too.
Me too.
Yep.
Okay.
So then, if I'll stop sharing this one for just a second, and give me just a second to queue up a different one.
But Jeff, do you want us to pass first reading of that mill rate?
Yeah, I'm going to pull that up here.
Maybe do that.
Mayor, before we do that, I want to ask you a question. Now,
Go ahead, Councillor.
You said that this average increase is on about $15 on a residential.
Correct.
What's the value of that residential home that you're taxing it
on? $187,418.
So we've got some homes that are a lot more than that.
Yeah,
you sure do. Yeah,
it could be between $15 and $50, $60. It could be that type of increase.
I know where mine's going.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
well, I
you're
know,
twice that, Councillor, for sure, right?
I know where mine is going too. But the truth of the matter is, why don't we wait? I mean, if we pass the first reading and we have a better sense of what's going to happen with the recreation facilities, next time we look at this, then we can decide if we want to use the buffers that we have, the 140,000 or so, to reduce that amount.
That's right.
And so that is still a chance we have to improve things. But right now, if we run into a deficit, you will have to tax for it. So,
Yeah.
you know, you got to have a little bit of leeway here.
I just would throw out that this budget absorbs the $76,000 in policing and inflation for 1%.
Right. Which is
So,
already quite good.
yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
times are not easy, let's face it.
Mayor, I agree 100% with you, because we're just getting started into it, really and truthfully, in our area. What's going to happen in the next month or so in
We
our
don't
area?
know. We have
That's
no
it.
idea. So if somebody feels comfortable putting the first reading for the adoption of that mill rate,
Oh, let me show
Councillor-
you. Let me
Councillor
just.
Bengry, we need to
I'll,
do that. It needs to be a formal way to say it.
So this is basically just the breakdown if you care about all those 0.010% number. So that's with the spreadsheet we just showed you. That's what it looks like in the bylaw. So this is bylaw 1684. You do not. So let me give a little historical context. In the past, you've normally done 3 readings on this in your first meeting in May. We have the opportunity here to do a first reading, and it may tweak a little bit by second reading, and that's okay.
Yeah.
So it's up to you guys.
No, I think we could possibly pass first reading, hoping that we have a better understanding of what happened with the recreation, and then it might change the mill rate a touch. Are you okay with that, Council?
Yes.
Councillor Barnes here.
Mayor, this is bylaw 1684, the flat tax.
1690.
1690 and flat tax.
Well, it's called mill rate bylaw.
Okay, I'll make the motion to do first reading on bylaw 1690, the mill rate bylaw.
Okay. So it's a fairly lengthy, detailed bylaw, as you can see on your screen. Okay. Questions?
You want all the whereases in there?
Yes, Councillor,
Well,
correct.
Yeah, we don't need them in the motion. That's fine.
No. Are you okay, Councillor?
Yep.
Everybody okay?
Yep.
Okay, all in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
All right. So let's go to 6D, draft bylaw 1689 is a borrowing bylaw. Now, this one is an unfortunate big expense, but the truth of the matter is, unless we fix the problem will eat up all our maintenance money year after year and plus. So this is a large amount of money, and Jeff is going to talk about that one, and we will need to pass a first reading.
So this bylaw in front of you is to authorize a borrowing of $450,000. Now, I will tell you right now that between first and second reading, that number is going to change just a little bit. And the reason is we're waiting on some final quotes from Porter Tanner, because we just got the final detailed construction design done. And so as soon as we get those, we'll tweak it. But that's perfectly fine to amend that between first and second reading. There's no problem there. And we think we're close.
Okay, so 450 seems to be a ceiling. That's what you're trying to
We
tell
think
me?
so. Yeah, we think that'll be it. So why I wanted to get this on the table, Council, now is that we need to advertise and do a public hearing for a borrowing bylaw.
That's correct.
Which will be 2 weeks out. Porter Tanner would like to do this project in May.
Okay. So Jeff, because it's a public hearing, we need ways to allow the public to have input into what we're doing here.
Yeah.
So I can see that Lethbridge is using various media, allowing people to send comments, and they are read on the table. They also allow people to send info through the media, the social media. And the other one that they're using the ability of people to connect with council the day of the hearing through phone.
So we have a lot of those options at our disposal. We will have the people can come to the Civic Center if they wish to speak to it, and we'll have a computer for them to speak to you from. But we can also actually give them a link to the meeting.
Perfect.
If they want to dial in or come to the meeting, and because I can control who's in the meeting, right? I can remove people and control that.
Yeah. So that's excellent. I really think we need to make sure that people have the option, not that they're going to exercise their rights, but we need to give them the option.
So that's we'll work on that and what that would look like during this time.
Okay. So, councillors, is there anything in that bylaw that triggers some interest or questions?
Just a comment.
And Councillor Selk and Councillor Barnes. Go ahead, Councillor Bengry.
Jeff, I am so sick of this outlaw law. I puke every time I hear it.
Well then.
What's saying that this new pipe that we use is not going to do the same thing?
That's
very interesting question, but the pipe is not the same type. It's a high pressure pipe. Go ahead.
The intent, Councillor, so can I tell you with 100% surety that the new pipe's never going to have a problem? Nope.
No, you
can't. Now the proposal is we're going to HDPE pipe, fused, where the pressures are considerably higher. We're installing different air valves. We're installing real-time pressure monitoring. And so, again, on paper, it looks like it should work like a champ. I simply have to go on the advice of the engineers here, Councillor. I don't have any other thing but to do that.
Yeah, our last break, Jeff, was just above Extra Foods, and it was coming down into the borrow pit, right?
Well, it wouldn't be that far west because it doesn't start until the sewer plant.
Oh, okay. But is it a slope problem? Putting the pressure on the pipe?
That's literally the $4.2 million question, Councillor, and I don't know.
Councillor Bengry, we have had all the engineers, all those that were originally at the table and who worked on that project together. And with all the amount of testing we've done and all the amount of scrutiny on the engineering that was done by outside party, there is nothing that comes clear as to why that's happening. That is honestly an engineering mystery that we're paying the price for. It's unfortunate, but we cannot let that line break because from an environmental perspective, as you know, we cannot put sewer in a creek. So we need to fix the problem. And unfortunately, it's costly. But the cost of litigation, we looked at that also. We have been absolutely advised that because there is no fault that can be found anywhere, we would not win the case. Therefore, let's fix the problem. Councillor Barnes.
So when you look at the amount of money that we have out that we borrowed, this isn't going to really hurt us a lot because we're not anywhere near where we're allowed to borrow, and we've been frugal in the past. So I think we need to move forward, and I'm prepared to make that motion.
Okay, so hang on to your motion. Councillor Selk wanted to have some input.
Okay. Only two comments really. One is we discussed all this a month ago, so I'm pretty sure we're all aware of the context of this. And two, I think as long as the public is made aware of the reason this borrowing bylaw is being implemented, they'll fully understand. And three, I'm fairly certain that in our explanation, we can say we are paying off what we borrowed before. And this is just new borrowing that we'll have to fix the problem. So.
And so that is a very good point. And that is in the bylaw, by the way.
Yeah. But make sure the public understands that principle.
Yeah.
That it's going to be paid off.
Yeah, Jeff, go ahead.
You bring up two things that I thought I failed to mention, and then a great point, Councillor Selk. One is I wanted to talk to you about how we're structuring this debt because it's a bit unique. Right. So we first went to Alberta Capital Finance Corporation and said we want to extend our current loan by 3 years by this amount. And they said, due to the volatility in the markets, we're not taking new loans right now. So wait for our fall intake. You can only apply twice to Alberta Capital Finance, 2 times a year. So we went to the credit union and said, look, would you guys give us a line of credit for the amount? And then once Alberta Capital Finance will take it, then they'll simply buy out the line of credit. Because what we were trying to avoid was we're already making a $172,000 a year mortgage payment on the outfall line. I didn't want to make two $172,000 mortgage payments on the outfall line.
That was my worry.
So what's going to happen is in the budget, and I forgot to point it out, it's in the one we just finished tonight. We have $5,500 in there that is the interest on that line of credit for 6 months. And so for 2020, we're going to pay our $172,000 plus $5,500 in interest until Alberta Capital Finance can buy out that line of credit.
Okay, but Jeff, the motion reads that we will repay, doesn't give a time frame, it seems to me. The motion reads that we will repay principal and interest on an annual or monthly schedule payment. So if that is a case, how does that work?
You mean the bylaw reads that, not the motion?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just looking. It says the municipality shall repay the indebtedness according to the repayment structure in effect, namely semi-annual or annual equal payments of combined principal and interest not to exceed 5 years.
Right.
So, yeah.
So
once
how do you interpret that then?
When we're structured with Alberta Capital Finance, there'll be 5 years left on that loan as of this year.
Okay, so that means that in between, for 6 months or whatever that takes, we will only pay the interest on the second portion of the borrowing.
Yeah, on the line of credit. So we figured it'll cost about $5,500. Yeah.
Okay, so about $40,000 over 6 months or so.
No, 5,500 total.
Oh, total.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what I was trying to understand. What are we looking at?
No, 5,500 between now and the time we restructure with Alberta Capital Finance.
Okay, thank you. So that clarifies a lot. Councillor Selk.
Just a question. I think we talked about this before, Jeff, but in reality, once we pay off our previous loan, we're saying we're going to borrow for 5 years, but we should only have 3 payments, right?
Yeah, when I mean 5 years, it's the 2 left on the current and the 3 we add to it with this.
Right.
Yeah, so 5 years from now, the whole thing's paid off.
So in other words, right now we have $494,965 left to pay on the other debts.
So we have 2 payments left on the outfall of 172,000 and change, so 350 grand. And the rest of that is the solar on the Civic Center and the solar on the ice rink.
So we don't have much money owing.
No, we do not until we pay for the solar farm.
Well, that's a different story, but that will come with some revenue.
Yeah, it has revenue attached. That's right.
Right.
So the other thing I wanted to mention to Councillor Selk's point, and I mentioned the mayor and I talked about this a couple days ago, between, well, if you do first reading tonight, I'd like to prepare a communication that you all have when you get questions about why we're borrowing for a sewer line, so that everybody's on the same page with all the details. And that's what we can put out in the public.
Yeah, we need to have the same message, because people will ask, and rightly so. They should ask. Okay, so are we ready to do first reading for the bylaw 1689?
I have just one question.
Go ahead, Councillor Court.
With the new piping, is there going to be any kind of warranty on this thing? Any kind of a guarantee if it breaks? If we can, I mean, I'm getting a new car in 2 days. I hope the warranty is pipeline.
Better than the pipes, huh? Yeah, me too.
It's a valid question, Councillor Court. I'm just seeing if I can pull quickly up. This is their Stantec's proposal. So let me just grab something for it here for you. Okay. I'd probably need to talk to Stantec, but they are going to be on site 3 days per week to observe construction to ensure that their design is being followed through. So I believe we would still, because we're doing a redesign, I believe we would still have that protection under the engineering firm.
Okay.
Will our people be there? Would Bart be there, for example, or would somebody of the town be there?
I don't know if we'll be there full time, but we'd certainly be there a lot for sure. There's no question about that.
Because I think we need to see.
Yeah.
Jeff, can you disclose the other contractors involved?
That's it. I'm Porter, Tanner, and Stantec. That's it.
Good. Porter, Tanner's involved?
Well, they're going to do it. Yeah.
Good.
We didn't.
Okay.
So here's another thing. So we didn't put this out to bid, and that's because I want to be careful how much we're saying in public session here. We'll talk about it later. I didn't put it out to bid, and that's because frankly, no one's going to touch their bid.
That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
And really, at this point, we need to have engineering that kind of makes sense for us, because we know where we are with all those firms, and we need to carry on and not start from fresh, because it might be dreadful for us all. Okay, ready? I'm still waiting to know if you want to pass first reading.
I thought.
Well, I guess I'll make the motion and we'll go from there.
Yeah.
So I'm prepared to, I make motion to approve the first reading for the borrowing bylaw 1689 for the water outfall line.
All right. Any further questions? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Jeff, it has been a massive headache for you for the past 2 years,
It's not over yet.
and we're not over. In fact, if you saw in a budget, a question, an item that was a $70,000 expense on the outfall line, and asked Jeff, what's that? Well, says that's the 2 breaks we just got.
Yeah.
So let's hope we have none in between now and the start of the project. Okay, so let's go on to item 7, other business. So we have 7A, as every quarter, the code of conduct compliance has to do with the Alberta Utility Commission. It's a requirement that we need to pass a quarterly compliance report. So I just need a motion to that effect.
I'll make that motion.
Councillor Selk, go ahead.
I move to accept the quarterly code of conduct report.
Good. Thank you. Compliance report. Thank you. Question? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right. 7B, the Badlands letter. Now that's a very funny story. As if you knew here.
How come I'm not laughing?
Right. A year ago, we had mentioned that the Mormon Trail had decided to pull out of the Badlands. So the 4 communities did no longer want to belong to the Badlands because Mormon Trail was discontinued. So that didn't seem to understand the email that Jeff sent. Jeff, you want to talk to that?
Yeah, I mean, I just put the email string in your package where we got this invoice from Diana, and I said, well, we gave our notice last November 29th. And then I phoned Lana and said, hey, when is this effective? And she says, well, it's effective immediately. I said, okay, thanks for everything. that was kind of the end of it. And then, so Diane says, well, you have to send us a letter and the resolution. And I said, like this one that I sent on November 29th. And then she says, well, we want a letter from your mayor and council is required. And I just said, okay, fine.
So we shall send a letter, but in that letter, we will mention that we had a motion and we're not passing another motion because that motion already said we're not paying.
They shouldn't be getting the money.
Nope. Of course not.
So Councillor Selk, just so you know, I drafted a letter, but it's not the one you think it is. So I just wanted to throw this out there. I did draft this if you want, that the town is in receipt of your invoice. Our council made a resolution in 2019 to leave the Badlands organization. The resolution and additional correspondence was sent November 29th, 2019. It was our understanding from Badlands administration that the notice, I should say was effective immediately. And that the town, I'm glad I'm proofing this in real time with you, was thereby removed from the organization. The town has not budgeted for this expense in 2020 and does not wish to pay for another year. We ask that our notice of withdrawal from the Badlands of November 29th be accepted.
Thank you.
Is that super diplomatic or?
It's very good.
Okay.
I appreciate that. So do you
need a motion?
Yeah.
Yeah, please go ahead.
I make a motion to send the letter to the Badlands requesting our pullout from the 2020 Badlands membership.
Okay. All in favor?
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so that's dealt with. Okay, so Jeff, you wanted to give an update on the 7C about the COVID-19 Emergency Coordination Center.
Yeah, I do. Let me close a couple things here. Okay. Things are moving along fairly quietly. Today we had our health agency meeting and we had our government agency meeting. So those both went really well. By and large, everyone is reasonably prepared and doing good things. One of the tricky points that keeps coming up, and it's not just us, it's everywhere, is...
Excuse myself for a minute. I got something going on upstairs. I don't know what it is, so I'll be right back.
Okay. Mayor, do you want to take maybe a few-minute recess and let everybody stretch their legs or hit the fridge, or what do you think?
Would you like to do that, councillors?
I'm good.
Okay.
Everybody's good? Okay. So one of the areas that's a bit of a challenge for us is the campground. Now, some context, and I would really like some discussion on this and what we should do. And Randy and I have met with the contractors a couple of times in the last week as well. So just let me provide the context that federal and provincial campgrounds are closed. They're not taking any reservations, I think, until May 17th or something. And that doesn't mean that people can go there. It just means they're not even taking reservations until then. So those federal and provincial are all closed. You can't even go there. The province has put out direction on private campgrounds saying you can open with a number of conditions, and it's a number of lengthy conditions. So 50% capacity, use every other site, no public washrooms, no public facilities, water fill stations, all that stuff. No stores, no concessions, everything like that. So fine. So the problem we have is it's one thing to open under those conditions, but I've already been receiving calls. So we had some people that pulled into the campground on the weekend, by the way. And the RCMP phoned the peace officer phoned me, I phoned the Quintons. We had this whole thing and they were gone by Sunday afternoon. But just so you know, we have 2 trailers in there that came in today who are staying for 2 months. So we're housing some essential workers on a gas line out by the customs office. And there's going to be 2 more of them coming in another 2 weeks. So when we've talked with Quinton's, we've been saying, do we house essential workers in the campground? And then how do we deal with campers? Because there's this perception that if we allow campers, we're basically saying, hey, everyone from High River, Calgary, and Brooks, come on down here and go to the gas station, grocery store, and walk around. And while statistically there's very little risk there, there's still a public perception. And I was just saying, I got a call from one of the neighbors down there by the campground who were furious that we were letting people stay in the campground. And all the things they're doing to keep people so we don't have cases in the community, and we're just going to let Calgarians roam free in the community. You know, so there's this concern about how to do this properly from a perception point of view, and then just from a pure logistical point of view. So the campground contractors are, the Quintons they're great to deal with. So we have good partners there to bargain and to negotiate with. They're reasonably content if we keep it closed until June 1st. And then we start seeing if more direction comes from the province, or if movement kind of relaxes a little bit, or what that looks like. Everyone's panicked a bit right now for the May long weekend. And from the provincial level, I feel for them, because I sit in on these phone calls like today with Alberta Emergency Management, and there's, you know, like 60 directors of emergency management on the call. And you got half of them saying, please don't allow these people to come to our community. Keep them out. Close municipal campgrounds, please. And then you have the other half saying, no, wait a minute. We need the economic activity in the community. We need people moving. We want this to happen. And so they're in a really tough spot, and I feel for them. So private campgrounds within the county are currently open. And so particularly you'll see them in that Glenwood, Hill Spring area. And I talked to Murray today. They're receiving all kinds of calls from the community saying, why are you letting all these people converge upon our small village? You know, this is scary for us.
Yeah, it is.
And so I'm asking for you guys as the politicians to help me weigh out the political perception of this versus the basic financial economics of it, and where in the world we want to go with this campground, because it's ours. The town owns it. You have full discretion over it. We have contractors who are agreeable to measures we may put in place, and it doesn't hurt that one of them is a councillor in the county, so he gets the political ramification. Okay. But I am struggling with the campground and how to satisfy. We have private contractors that rely on that revenue, and yet you have a community that's looking to you to offer some protection where possible.
Councillor Bengry, I'm going to give you a chance, but let me ask Jeff this. Jeff, have you seen the latest release from the province regarding councillors that have businesses? They are now going to have the chance to be compensated for losses incurred in their business while they are councillors. So that is something new as a package that is offered by the province. So I would imagine that at the worst, if we were to close the campground, that he has a venue where he can be compensated also through the province emergency packages that they're offering. Am I correct there?
So I saw that notice. I don't understand all the implications in a scenario where they don't own the asset. It's not their business, but they contract a service. I just don't know those implications.
Right. I didn't really talk about if they own or not.
Yeah.
If they operate a business.
Yeah, I just don't know.
Councillor Bengry, Councillor Drew.
Council, we didn't know this was going to happen even in January, but it did. So if we open up a campground and thinking we're going to get revenues, what's it going to cost us if we get COVID-19?
No, you're right.
So as far as I'm concerned, in my own opinion, we keep the campground closed until we get the provincial health minister saying it's all right, let's do this and this and this. But as far as I'm concerned, you give them an inch, they'll take a mile.
They're not totally closed, right? That's the whole point. The ministry has not made a clear-cut decision for the municipally owned campground. That's where the gap is right now.
We
Councillor
can
Drew?
open under certain circumstances. We can right now.
Yeah, but very, very stringent. The thing is, you cannot control the movement of the people. That's a problem.
So they leave the campground and walk down Main Street and get in contact with our individuals on Main Street. We have COVID-19. No,
Yeah,
I say close it off.
Okay.
Have a question.
That's your opinion, Councillor Drew, Councillor Bound.
I just, I think that we should be following what AHS is telling us. Those who are in the medical profession, who are, the government that's saying, we need to do this, we need to do that, we need to open this up slowly. Kind of like what we're talking about, Councillor Selk talked about, let's wait and see about the fireworks. I think we can wait and see. I think we can have some plans in place, but I would feel comfortable following whatever the government tells us that we can do. I look to the States, and their leader is saying one thing and their medical people are saying another, and I don't think that's a very good mix. And I think that we need to be kind of in the same path as our medical, provincial, federal people. So that's just my opinion.
It's a very interesting comment, because right now the medical personnel still tell us to stay at home. But the political is telling us, well, under those conditions, you can do it. And this is where we have a little bit of a gap. Councillor Bounds?
So we've got, you say we've got workers from ATCO Gas?
They're not from ATCO Gas. They're from an energy company who's doing work on a gas line between Montana and Alberta.
So, and I can see where the people are concerned, because they're just seeing campers in there, right?
Mm-hmm.
They don't know where they're coming from. Is there how do we govern those guys and tell them, they can't walk downtown, they can't leave the campsite, they got to bring in their own food, everything else that goes with it? And then how do we deal with that and make sure that they stay there?
I'm confused why you would try and dictate that, because you and I can take a drive to Calgary now.
I'm just throwing out some information.
Yeah, like you and I can take a drive to Cargill and smear ourselves all over the wall and come home again, right?
Yeah,
So,
so I'm just saying, you got people calling you saying, why are we on campers? And so you're going to have to explain to them, well, these aren't campers, these are workers, and they're exceptional circumstances that need to be dealt with.
Right.
Either that, or we tell these guys, oh, we got a real problem here, and so you're going to have to go out to Carway and park your campers out there. And I don't like that idea either, so I don't know. But
okay, so you are touching on something that is important. There is a distinction there.
Yeah.
Those campers are there to house workers that are essential workers.
Yeah, essential, exactly. That's the word.
So if that is something that the campground can control, in a sense that only essential workers could be there, and we have a proof of it, contract or whatever that is, that I could give us, then I would say they would have to follow the rules, which are tough, because there is no washroom, there's no showers, there's no wash machines, there's none of those facilities would be available to them.
So put them in the reunion campground.
well, that's fine, Councillor. I don't think they necessarily care where they are, but they're still at the campground.
So can
But essentially, the public needs to know what kind of people they are that are there and why. Councillor Drew, Councillor Brown.
So can we put signage up stating that? I know that in Waterton, they've basically said Waterton's open to those who live there and those essential workers who are doing construction, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So if we put signage up there and we let people know through a communication that that's what's happening, just so that people, we don't get phone calls with irate people saying, well, you're letting people camp and
Yeah.
That's
And-
one way of taking care of that.
And I really think, Jeff, in our next communication to the public, we should address that and make that clear. The same when we did it with the Flamingo, I got phone calls saying, people thanking me, saying, now we understand. And I think the same story. Would that be possible?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm just looking up. It's interesting. The company that these guys work for, they sent me an email yesterday, well, a letter. And it was a digitally signed letter talking about how these people, they gave their names, and I'm not going to share it because it's public here, but said they are an essential asset required to provide distribution of energy. Here's what they're doing. We would like you to allow them to travel freely within your community and stay there. Like, they've been very formal about trying to make sure that we understand this isn't just some fly-by-night.
But because they come from Montana, most likely.
Well, they're coming out of Alberta.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
they're in Alberta.
So they need to follow the AHS rules at all time.
Yeah.
And that is something we could ask them.
Yeah. Councillor Brown had something, I believe.
Councillor Brown, go ahead.
Okay, 3 things, but I will start with Councillor Court's internet just dropped, and so he's going to be calling me like we did a minute ago. He's just trying to fix it. So anyway,
Okay.
3 things. The first, I think we're a little bit delusional in our thinking that Calgary people don't come here, because if you talk to Ricky Thiessen, who is the manager of Extra Foods, he will tell you that they come here often and buy us out of a lot of things. So to think that they're not coming and smearing, as Jeff said, themselves all over Cardston, they are. So, and I think we're all speaking the same language when we all say, let's just put a pin in this. Let's wait until we have further information till June 1st, and then we'll go ahead and make that decision. I think everyone has spoken, and everyone, it sounds like, is pretty much saying the same thing, because I feel, and I am a huge supporter of the mayor putting out a video or whatever and letting the public know, yes, this is what we're doing at the campgrounds, or this isn't what we're doing at the campgrounds, because it stops our phones from getting lit up, right?
Right.
And the more information we give to the public, the better we are. We're not trying to smuggle them in. We're not trying to, these people are above board. They're not, smearing. It's all good. It's above board smearing, let's say. That's what I got.
So if I understand you right, you would be okay with essential workers being there?
Absolutely.
All right. So, Councillor Bengry, under those conditions, are you able to accept that?
I can handle that. This campground is being reserved for essential workers only. Period.
Yeah. Okay. So, and are we okay with revisiting that June the 1st after the province give us hopefully better information?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Does that work?
I agree.
Councillor
we need better information. We just don't have it right now.
Yep.
We know what they're allowing us to do, but we don't know if they'll come to a point where they say, no, forget it, won't happen. And by then, there will be a wave. 14 days is the incubation rate, so they will know what's happening in those privately owned campgrounds. And by then, hopefully, we'll know what we need to do for sure. But I agree, I would rather err on the side of caution. Councillor Jeff?
So going forward, when I met with Shelley this morning, we talked on the phone. Essential workers, okay. We're going to meet with them again mid-month, and then we'll start making decisions looking at June 1st after the May long weekend. Are we all comfortable with that right now?
Yeah. And I really would like them to look at what the government is offering to those who are councillors and have business, running a business. I really would like to know if they would qualify under those provisions. If they lose business.
Mayor, there are a lot of federal programs for businesses right now. I haven't seen a lot from the province, but
this one is particular for councillors who are working on council. Up to now, if a councillor was on a council and owned a business or ran a business, they could not access any sort of funding. That was changed yesterday or the day before.
Okay, I'll proceed with that. I'll probably have it on your May 26th agenda, and I may invite the campground contractors to join us.
Thank you.
To talk about some of that then.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay, so 7D, business arising from the delegation. I think we asked Corporal Fraser all we wanted. Please, if you have friends or whatever, if you have access to your Facebook or whatever you're doing, send the message, protect your belonging. We are in a very strange time where people do not have the same access to people for money. So let's protect ourselves. Under 8, committee and other reports. There are a few reports. Thank you for those who sent them. 8B, there is a CEO, Councillor Brown. I saw your FCSS was a lengthy one.
Thank
You
you.
had 2 of them.
Sorry, I just wanted to take a minute and pay my respects. I sit on FCSS board with Councillor Myron Libert, and he just passed away last week. So our thoughts and prayers go to him and his family. He was on the board with us on behalf of FCSS. Before he passed away, we sent a care package to him and his family that they were able to have before he passed away. And then we are sending flowers on behalf of the town. We sent them to the funeral, was my understanding as well. So,
yeah, they went out.
Okay, good. Good.
I
know a guy.
Yeah.
I much appreciated that. And I put on behalf of the town and mayor and council.
Perfect.
I put some our condolences.
Sorry, I just thought it was
in the last communication that we did, so it should be in the paper too.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. 8B, the CAO report. You can see Jeff was not busy this past month.
Not busy.
It's been a little obscene with meetings. Jeez.
Before that happened, Jeff and I were talking, and I said, Jeff was telling me he just relishes the time to be able to catch up on all sorts of things. And that came. So
yeah,
we'll have to catch up some other time.
And if I'm a little out of sorts next week, it's because Friday night I was supposed to fly to Mexico for a 10-day vacation with my family. And so that didn't happen. And I'm stuck with a whole bunch of flight vouchers that I don't know when I'm going to use. So
I'm right. Yeah, I'm right with you. I was supposed to be at Celine Dion with my wife in Saskatoon last weekend.
Yeah, so I'm a little bent about that.
Yeah.
Right.
Supposed to be in North Carolina a week from today. So
yeah.
It's amazing of us. We need to reorganize ourselves and
I was going to Calgary.
Yes.
Yeah.
80, the peace officer report, you can see there is still a lot of animal issues, the dogs and barking and whatever. So it seems to be working, and we didn't have our peace officer for the beginning 2 weeks, and he was not well. So we now resuming with working with the Blood Tribe and CMP regarding the order that has come from Chief and Council to have people in by 8 o'clock.
Oh, yeah, Council, did I tell you about what he's doing to help with the curfew on the Blood Reserve?
Maybe you want to.
Oh, sorry. I thought we might have mentioned it. So Sean, starting this week, is working evenings. So you might remember we talked about the Blood Reserve put on a curfew and then asked if we would try and work with our businesses to close at the same time as their curfew, which is 9 p.m., which was a problem for Red Rooster, Fast Gas, and Husky. And so I met with all 3 of those businesses, and they weren't particularly keen about it. And a lot of it was because they've already cut back staff hours. Fast Gas cut down a whole 8-hour position, a full-time position, and they were trying not to cut back further. So I met with Rick Soup, my counterpart at the Blood Tribe, and I suggested, what if our peace officer works with the Blood Tribe police, and for those 2 hours from 9 till 11, he'll patrol Highway 5 and those businesses, and if there's anyone that they see visibly coming from the reserve, he would stop and tell them, educate them and keep a bit of a tally. So Rick thought that was a great idea. That was a good partnership. So there's a constable in Moses Lake at night now. Well, they're all over, but they're focusing on Moses Lake, and then Sean is there, and the RCMP are having a constable also participate, and they're kind of patrolling to get a feel for how much of an issue this is, and then really just educating and asking people to turn around and go home. So we're just logging what's happening there, and then I'll report back and meet with Rick again. But I think we found a good resolve versus forcing those businesses to close earlier than they wanted to.
So,
point of interest,
Councillor Barnes, go ahead.
So I got a phone call from a lady who works on the reserve with some concerns about traveling for the Blood Tribe members traveling. They're under order that they're not allowed to travel past Grantham, and they've had their members already sent home because they've gone to Lethbridge. They don't want them there, and they have been told if they go past Grantham and they get caught, they're subject to some stiff penalties. And I talked with a good friend from out on the reserve, and she said, "Oh yes, bro, we've got to stay home. We can be out until such and such a time, and then after that, if they catch us, we can be penalized big time." So they're stopping people from going to Grantham. If they're First Nations, they're in trouble if they go past Grantham.
Well, they need to be careful, especially because there's now a reserve that has pieces. So not ours.
I know up around
Edmonton,
the Bears Paw Reserve,
right,
announced yesterday 8 cases.
That's High River.
Yeah.
Is that where it is?
Okay.
They didn't have any cases before, but now they got 8.
Okay.
Well, it's coming from the plant.
Well, that could be.
Spawn from the plant.
All right, Councillor, can we carry on?
Please.
Anyway.
8C development report. As you can see, there is something odd with this development report, Jeff. Help me understand the first line.
Let me open it 1 second, Councillor Mayor.
Now that I want it, I probably won't find it. But the first one has a lot. Oh yeah, here it is. I don't know if it's something wrong, but. Oh, no, okay, I get it. It's a comparative. That's okay. I got it. No problem. So, AD Peace Officer report. We talked about that. Anything else? There is under correspondence. There is Minister Madhu, Councillor Selk. Maybe you want to talk about that you now a commission.
We're a commission.
Chief Mountain Solid Waste Authority is a commission.
Thanks for the additional context, Councillor.
But maybe you could say also you're a member of the board. You're part of the board of executive, if I understand right.
Well, until we got our council package, this was the first I knew that we were actually approved.
Oh, well, so I'm glad to inform you.
Yeah, I was impressed. Thanks.
Okay. The second one is an interesting letter from a grade 6, I think, grade 6 student, Gavin Hinter, who really is passionate about doing some skateboarding and is concerned to the fact that there is no more and that the old pieces that we dismantled never were reassembled. If you remember, we had some few issues regarding those use or misuse of that park. So we thought maybe the Park and Rec should deal with that better than us at this table. Councillor Brown?
No, I was just going to add, he's a grade 7 student, and I love that has a passion and that he's brought it to council. And I've got to applaud him for that, because that's pretty fantastic.
Yes.
But because of the COVID and because of everything that's going on, I feel like this has definitely put a pin in it, and we'll reevaluate this, not right now.
But I think maybe that letter should be sent to the Park.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think so.
That is a place where it should be. And
Agreed.
But I really totally appreciate his desire to address council. Good for him.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just so you know, he emailed Jill this letter, and so she wrote him back and thanked him for this and told him we'd send it to council, and really encouraged him to correspond, that it was an appropriate letter and it was well done. And so we've tried to make sure that we're appreciative of that feedback too.
Perfect.
So can we send him a letter from mayor and council thanking him for? Sure. Or have you already done that, Jeff?
We could send him a letter telling him that we are referring his request to the Parks and Rec Board, but that due to circumstances, it's unlikely that we could deal with the issue right now.
Yeah, perfect.
If someone wants to make a resolution to that effect, I'll draft and send that letter.
I'll make that revolution.
Go ahead.
It's a revolution.
It's a revolution. Yeah, I'll make that revolution. That we send him a letter from town council.
All right, regarding the skateboard park. Yeah. All in favor?
Yes.
Thank you.
So what time does the revolution meet? I just
that's right.
Parks and Rec.
I'll send you an email there and let you know.
All right.
Going close.
Yes.
Councillor Bengry, go ahead.
That letter was very interesting to me, because like Councillor Brown says, it shows a passion in this young man.
Oh, totally.
Life. And I would love to take that a young man like that and sort of work him into some kind of a department where he can see actually what's going on and maybe be a part of it if you use him in a volunteer situation. I think it would really help him. I was impressed.
Well, I would let administration deal with that part since it's employment.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So at this point, the public portion of this meeting is over. So we need a motion to go in close.
I'll make that motion.
I think Councillor Brown had her hands up, so I'll take a motion.
Go for it.
Fabulous. I would like to make the motion to go into closed session.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, bye, Corey.
Bye, Corey.
Just give him a couple minutes, folks, and then we'll go.
Jeff, I just wanted to, can you give me a second? Jeff, I just wanted to know, do you want the ICF meeting afterwards?
Yeah.